What's up guys, Matt Monis here, and in my hands I have the BlackBerry Priv, and the Priv stands for Privilege and Privacy. Now when I first saw this phone, when it was first leaked, I thought it looked really cool. A BlackBerry slider, it's running a full version of Android, a Canadian company, so there's obviously some Canadian pride. But now that I have it in my hands, is it as good as it actually looks? Let's find out. So let's start with the design. And if you've ever wanted to buy a phone and not even think about getting a case, the Priv has your name all over it. The back is made out of this rubber texture that grips pretty much any surface really well. It has the most grip I've felt on a phone straight out of the box. On the right side, you have your volume up and down controls with a mute button directly in the middle. Now the mute button itself is only used for actually muting calls and media. If you press it while doing anything else, it will just bring up your sound notification menu. On the left you have your power button, and on the top you have your SIM tray and micro SD card slot. The front of the device holds the 5.4-inch AMOLED Edge display with the trademark BlackBerry logo on the top, and just below it is the full-size speaker grill running horizontally. The grill is mostly used for aesthetics as the speaker itself sits on the left side. Now the main attraction is the physical keyboard, at least for people who swear by them. It smoothly slides upwards by swiping up just above the speaker grill. But the keyboard itself is not your typical keyboard you're used to on a BlackBerry Bold or Curve. It's a lot more flat and the keys are a lot less contoured. I also found it to be a little cramped and found myself making a lot of typos. I'm sure if you're a BlackBerry addict, the keyboard will suit your needs, but I feel for most people they'll just use the virtual one instead. However, the trackpad itself does have a few tricks up its sleeve. For one, you can swipe up and down to scroll, and if you're browsing in your app drawer, you can swipe left to go right and vice versa. The Priv has a 5.4-inch QHD AMOLED display with 540 pixels per inch. It's not a bad display, but it's not great either. It reminds me of an AMOLED panel used in a Motorola phone from last year. The colors are vibrant as you would expect and the blacks are deep, but it lacks a certain punch compared to the newer AMOLED panels on the Galaxy Note 5 or Nexus 6P. The display gets fairly bright and the viewing angles are good. Below that display is the speaker, and as I mentioned before, it only sits on the left side. It's a mono speaker, and I give it a point for sitting on the front of the phone instead of the bottom or the back. It gets decently loud, but it's not nearly as clean and clear as some of the other top Android phones on the market. Beyond the display and speaker, the hardware inside is quite good. The processor is a Snapdragon 808 paired with 3 GB of RAM and does a decent job at keeping things moving along. And the reason I didn't say great is because I experienced some slowdowns here and there. I've had a few app crashes on me, and sometimes transitioning between apps, I would notice the phone would stutter. It's certainly not the hardware, as the LG G4 is a good example of a phone that runs well on the 808 and more of BlackBerry's software features not being optimized. In terms of heat, the phone does get quite warm under full load, which may be a concern over the long run. However, BlackBerry has added some nice touches to the software experience. For one, if you're a fan of the BlackBerry Hub, it's still there, and you can easily access it from the notification menu by swiping left or long pressing the home button. Speaking of the home button, it also gets you to Google Now and a search assistant. There's a lot of little software tricks and shortcuts with the Priv. You can have pop-up widgets if the app supports it by simply swiping up or down on the app icon, and the notification menu has icons for each app that has notifications. This allows you not to have to scroll through all of them if there's an app you favor. The recent tab looks different too. It has more of a window tile look to it. If you don't like it, you can always revert to the standard carousel. And BlackBerry has also added some gestures as well. Double tap to wake up is there, and if you leave the phone face down on the desk, it will put the phone into sleep mode in order to save power. So one of the major reasons why people buy a BlackBerry is because of security. They're known to have the best security on a smartphone. But the BlackBerry is not running BB10 or a variant of BlackBerry's OS. It's running Android. And in fact, it's running an older version of Android, Android Lollipop 5.1.1, along with a few BlackBerry tweaks. Now here's the thing, a security firm here in Toronto called Copperhead came out and actually said the BlackBerry Priv is not as secure as something as the Nexus 5X or the Nexus 6P. You see, the Nexus line is running the latest version of Android 6.0 Marshmallow, which actually has a ton of security improvements that the BlackBerry Priv doesn't have. Now, there's also a lot of other little things that goes along with it, and they're actually saying that the BlackBerry Priv at all doesn't have too many security enhancements compared to some of the other smartphones out there. Now there's the huge article about it, I will place it in the link in the description below, but the bottom line is if you have a Nexus 6P or Nexus 5X, your phone's probably a little bit more secure. Moving on to battery life, and the BlackBerry Priv is supposed to last 22.5 hours with mixed use, at least according to BlackBerry. Seems like it should with a 3410 mAh battery inside, but I was getting more of a full day and nothing more. This is typically with the day starting at 5:45 a.m. and ending at 10 p.m. My day usually consisted of podcasting, watching YouTube videos, lots of messaging, and excessive web browsing. Now the BlackBerry does support wireless charging except for the models being sold through Canadian carriers, or specifically model SVT100-3. If it has a -1, it has wireless charging. If it has a -3, it does not. Now it does have quick charging too in case you need to top up your battery in a short period of time, but it doesn't come with a quick charging brick, so you'll have to buy your own if you want to take advantage of it. Now music lovers and photo buffs will love the storage on the Priv. It comes standard with 32 gigabytes of internal storage space with a micro SD card slot that supports up to 200 gigabytes. So moving on to the camera, and this is definitely the best camera on a BlackBerry phone to date. But don't let that excite you. It's 18 megapixels, uses the Sony IMX230 sensor, which is the same sensor in the Moto X Pure, but instead has a Schneider Kreuznach lens and blessed with optical image stabilization. The camera app itself is slow to load, slow to focus, and slow to save photos. It has manual controls, but they're severely limited. Needless to say, the software needs some serious updating. The pictures on the other hand are good, colors are pretty accurate, and pictures are full of detail. But compared to the Nexus 6P or Note 5, colors seem a little washed out. Low light is even worse with less saturation and a lot of digital noise. The front-facing camera on the other hand is a measly 2 megapixels with pretty poor performance and a blue tint to it. If you love your selfies, you'll want to look elsewhere. And finally, the Priv is capable of shooting 4K video at 30 frames per second, and it does a pretty good job. OIS kicks in nicely and helps control any shakes and jitter, and the focus hunting is not as excessive as other smartphones on the market. Overall, I'd call the camera on the BlackBerry Priv slightly above average. Alright, so here are my closing thoughts. I'm going to start with the things that I loved about the BlackBerry Priv. I think it's a great device if you're someone who likes or appreciates a physical keyboard. Good for those who are coming from older BlackBerries or those who swear by a physical keyboard. Now, it's not the best physical keyboard, but it's obviously pretty much your only choice on an Android phone. The hardware is also pretty decent, and it does have some pretty cool software perks that a lot of you might appreciate. But the cons list is going to be a little bit longer. First of all, I find the build quality to be lacking. It feels kind of cheap in my hand, the back is really mushy, and for an expensive device, I really don't see how this is more of a premium phone than some of the other smartphones on the market. I also found the software to be very buggy as well, and the camera app was loaded slow, it was slow to focus, along with a few other things. And finally, the major one, it's really overpriced. For $900 Canadian or $700 US, it's hard for me to recommend this phone over other smartphones that are currently on the market. The LG G4, the Galaxy S6, the Nexus 6P, and even the Moto X Pure are all better examples than the BlackBerry Priv. Anyways, I want to know what you guys think in the comments below. Are you guys going to go out there and buy the BlackBerry Priv? Do you think it's a great phone? I want to hear what you guys have to say. I also want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, make sure you smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe. And as always, I will see you in the next video.